Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast. I really appreciate you being with me today for this episode, and I trust that it's going to be a great blessing to you. And I am excited about our guest today, because if you've been following the Power of Purity podcast for some time, way back in episode 111 and 112, I did 2 sessions with a guest back to back, and the title of those sessions were What My Husband's Struggle with Porn Has Been Like for Me, with Renee from Louisiana. And today's guest, coincidentally, is Greg from Louisiana, who happens to be Renee's husband. So Greg is said husband that was struggling with porn when I was interviewing his wife, Renee. And I've known Greg for some time now as a friend, an internet friend. We've spent some time together. And I think he's a really good man with a really good heart. And I think his story is pretty amazing. And I think we have a lot to learn, and that the listeners of the Power of Purity podcast will be very blessed and helped and encouraged by Greg's story. So with that being said, I'll say hello, Greg.
Hello, Tony.
Good to have you here. Thanks for doing this. So, Greg, before we jump into the interview, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself? Where do you live? Do you have hobbies? Do you have kids? Just a little bit about who is Greg.
Yeah, so I live in southwest Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana, and I actually grew up in Colorado, so I'm a little bit of a duck out of water, but I've lived here long enough that I'm used to the ducks and the mosquitoes and the alligators and all the above. In fact, I'm going alligator hunting this weekend.
Wow.
With my oldest son. And so I have 3 boys that one's married, and I have a granddaughter, and my middle son is 24, I think, and my youngest is 20. And so my hobbies are hunting and fishing. And I like to do a little bit of woodworking occasionally. I enjoy that, and I enjoy sitting on the porch with my wife. We live out in the country.
Well, cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
What I said in the introduction is true. You're Renee's husband.
Yes, that is correct.
So it was an honor to interview your wife, Renee, and she was real transparent and honest and open. And I encourage our listeners, if you haven't heard those interviews, episode 111 and 112, I might encourage you to go back and listen to that. And like a coin has 2 sides, one side is the wife, one side is the husband. So Renee was sharing with us her story and what it's been like as a Christian woman to be married to a man, a husband, who has had an ongoing struggle with pornography for some years. And so, Greg, do you have a sense of where we might want to begin today? I have a list of questions that I could ask you, but I guess to start off, it is true that you have had your own struggle with the sexual area of your life. And how would you put words to that? What has your struggle looked like?
Primarily, pornography and lustful thoughts and fantasy, but mostly just pornography and masturbation, of course. And
how far back, if you had to guesstimate, how far back does this go for you, this struggle?
So, I was exposed to pornography probably when, I don't remember anything about being 8, except finding a little stash of pornography in a trash pile, when I was 8. Me and a little friend were playing, and we came across it, and so that was the first time I saw it. And then, probably...
What an appropriate metaphor, by the way. You found trash in the trash.
Yeah. Yeah, and little did I realize, just how trashy it was, uh, to the soul.
Do you remember as a young boy how it affected you? How it made you feel, or how did you react? Did you think it was gross? Did you think it was weird? Did you want to go back and look at it? How did it impact this young boy?
It's hard to remember. I just remember seeing it. Um, I don't remember my exact feelings at the time, other than, the fact that it's still imprinted on my mind, some 45 years later. And I can't remember anything else about being 8, says a lot about that particular moment in time.
That was apparently a powerful enough event that somehow it imprinted itself as a memory that would never go away.
Right.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
And then we had some friends of the family that he kept some pornography. So I remember seeing some at their house, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then my cousin in Nebraska had some. And so there was a fair amount that I was exposed to, between 8 and 10. And then certainly, by the time I was 11 or 12, I probably had my own little stash that I would have and keep for a while and throw away, and then I might find some more again and keep it for a while and then throw it away, and so that was kind of a common theme, all through junior high and high school of finding pornography and then keeping it and looking at it and masturbating, and then get disgusted with it and throw it away.
So, if I was to ask the same question, how did it impact you? It feels like each year as you got older, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that this is becoming a trend in your life. It's something that's kind of following you. And would you say that, in a sense, the problem is escalating, or it's getting stronger and stronger, embedding itself in your heart and your soul, becoming more powerful, like you're more and more interested, you're intrigued, you're drawn to it?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think I recognized the compulsivity maybe until my late 20s.
And how would you put words to that? How did it occur to you, or was it becoming so regular, or hours a day, or several times a week? What was making it occur to you like, holy cow, maybe this is a problem?
Yeah, so I guess that I'm going to answer that two ways. I grew up in both parents were at home, and a fairly normal family. We went to church most weekends, and if you would have asked me, I would have said that I was a Christian, because I went to church, I was confirmed, I was a member of the church. My parents were Christians, my grandpa and grandma were Christians, my aunts and uncles were Christians, and so I guess I considered myself a Christian. And so I guess part of the throwing the, I guess I had this sense that what I was doing was wrong, yet, I continued to do it. But then, I don't think I felt too bad about it. And, it really wasn't until I was 30, right around there, actually might have been when we moved from Houston to Lafayette, right around 32, that we were in church, and I guess part of that too was the associate pastor was calling me every now and then, after we had gone to church as visitors for a while, and he happened to call me one night, and I was in the bathroom looking at a Playboy, and at the same time, at about the same time, I was reading my grandfather's biography, and I guess, I took a look at me in the mirror at that moment, and I thought about my grandfather's life, and it was just pretty obvious that things didn't line up, and I just realized that there was just something missing, and even though I professed to be a Christian, I really wasn't living like a Christian, and so it was either that Sunday or the next Sunday that I really did ask the Lord to come into my life, and I really believe that was a conversion experience for me. And
wow, at the age of 32,
yeah,
after going to church your whole life,
yeah,
something moved from your head to your heart. It feels like.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of transformation from there. It was easy to quit cussing and maybe easy to quit doing a lot of other things, but then at that point in time, I said, okay, I can't be looking at porn anymore. And
before we go on, I want to ask two questions.
Okay.
Right? The first one is, you reference your grandfather and kind of a sense of conviction coming into your heart and life. So presumably you saw your grandfather as a good man. Was he a Christian man, a man that you looked up to and admired?
Yeah, he was.
So you kind of figured Grandpa would never be into this stuff, but look what I'm doing.
Right. And so he was probably the best Christian role model in my life, because it was pretty obvious that his faith was pretty high on his list. Not only did we pray before meals, but we had Bible study after meals. He was a leader in the church. He taught Sunday school, so it was obvious, based on his actions, that that he was a Christian. And I was taking a look at some of my actions, and there wasn't a whole lot of my actions that was convicting me of who I really was.
I see. And by the way, we kind of jumped ahead there. You're 32 years old when this happens. Presumably you're married by now, is that correct?
Right. So
how old were you when you got married?
30. So we had been married right at 2 years, or maybe a year and a half.
When you became a Christian?
No, Renee and I got married. I was not a Christian.
That's what I mean. You were 32 when you became a Christian. You had been married about 2 years.
Yeah.
Did you think that when I get married, that's going to fix my problem with porn?
No, because before I got married, I really didn't think it was a problem.
I see. Wow, that's an interesting answer. So, did it ever occur to you, or did you think, this might be a problem in my marriage, or when I get married, then I can have sex with my wife, but I'll still look at porn, or I'll stop looking at porn when I get married? Did you have any thought process at all?
No, I don't think so. I would see, porn on occasion, but it wasn't an everyday thing. The internet hadn't come along. If I threw the porn away, then, I wouldn't look at porn unless I came across it at another time. So it was kind of, maybe few and far between.
Feels pretty sporadic once you got married.
Right, because of accessibility, more so than anything.
Once the internet came, you mean?
Now, once the internet came, that was when my real struggle began.
So in a very real way, it feels like the issue never did go away, even when you got married, and it really did follow you into your marriage and then began to manifest, especially when the internet came along.
Right. So when the internet came along, it just got worse. Because to some degree, I wouldn't go buy it because I didn't want to have to. I guess there was the shame of buying it face to face with the person across the counter. But then, the anonymity of the internet pretty much changed all that.
Right. That is a big, big dilemma of this whole situation, the accessibility. That's the word I would choose.
Yeah.
That guys basically know that it's just 1 or 2 clicks away on their device. And you can love God and be going to church and want to honor God and You can be doing great for days and days, or maybe weeks, or even months. You're doing good, but then you have a really bad day, or a couple bad days, or a bad week, and you're really struggling, or you have a fight with your wife, or you're mad at God, or you're kind of depressed, and you feel that pull, you feel that temptation, and the thing is sitting there almost like a voice saying, hey, just one or two clicks. Why don't you look at me? And that is a big, big temptation for the average guy to have to fight off, just the accessibility. It is such a dilemma.
It is.
So you found yourself struggling with that dilemma.
Right. So I'm not sure if the internet had showed up at our work about that time frame. I don't think it had. So, after I got saved, I was trying to not look at porn anymore, and I'm not sure how long had transpired, maybe a year. And I just, at some point, I came to the conclusion that I couldn't not do it. And I guess it was that realization that one day, I sat my wife down and just said, "Hey, I'm struggling with this, and I think I'm addicted to it. I can't seem to quit."
You're realizing that Greg is not controlling porn, and porn is controlling Greg.
Yeah.
And you came to the place where you voluntarily confessed this to Renee.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if, we wouldn't have had the internet back then, I don't think. And I'm not sure, I know that when Renee did her podcast, it sounded like she had seen me do it before I had talked to her about it. I don't know. That's 25 years ago. Lots of sketchy details.
Right.
But I definitely remember sitting her down and saying, I'm struggling with this, and I don't know what to do about it.
Do you remember how she reacted?
She was very gracious. She didn't get mad, and she was, wanted to know what she could do to help, and I don't think either one of us knew. Well, I'm certain of that. We had no idea what to do with it, to be honest. And I didn't know what to do with it either. So, the next few years it was try harder.
Right.
Right. Try harder, pray more, read your Bible more, go to church.
And how did that work out for you?
Not well. That just don't work.
So that leads into what I might call the cycle, where you try harder for a while, white knuckles, you're doing your best, but then you get tempted, you feel weak, you mess up. So then you feel bad, you feel shame. You confess to God, you promise yourself, you promise God, I'll never do it again, I'll try harder, God. On the strength of that commitment, you go for a while, then you mess up, then you feel bad, then you act out, then you promise God, then you try harder, and round and round and round we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can identify with that cycle.
I can.
So where do we go from here? What did you do with the cycle? You're trying harder. Apparently that's not working out too good. You still have this problem that's overcoming you instead of you overcoming it. So how long does this kind of cycle go on?
Wow, so the cycle goes on for another 25 years.
Wow.
Or maybe 20 years. So let's say I'm 35. By the time I try harder a couple of more years, and I'm 56. So, yeah, so another 20 years of trying harder. I did go at some point in time, go talk to our associate pastor at church and even our pastor about it. I did Celebrate Recovery a couple of times, and, it would get better for a while. I did some counseling with a counselor in Memphis, Tennessee, and I came back and maybe it was better for a while, but I would always seem to revert back to falling again. And okay, maybe I might go 2 or 3 weeks and then fall, and then maybe I'd crash and burn a couple of times a week for a while and then do better. Then I got to the point where, I was just going to fix it with filters. And so I completely eliminated internet access on my computer with a whitelist where I couldn't go to any website unless it was an approved whitelist. My phone was completely blocked out. We had blocks on the TV at home, and that worked great as long as the filters worked. But the first time you'd get an upgrade on your phone software and something changed, or maybe the filter didn't work, or whatever. And
so you would find different ways at different times and opportunities to still sneak and figure out a way to get to it.
Right, even with all the filters. And then,
which shows that in a very real way, the root of the problem hadn't changed yet.
Right.
Your heart hadn't changed.
Right.
It's what we might call a dry drunk, right?
Yeah.
If a person was driving drunk and they got in an accident and killed somebody, so they got incarcerated for 7 years. So they're locked up 7 years. They can't drink. They're not drinking. But it doesn't mean their problem's gone, because as soon as they get out, as soon as they have the chance to act out, they're going to act out again. So yeah, you didn't drink for 7 years, dude, but you haven't really dealt with your problem yet.
Right. So I guess it was a couple of years ago that, it was after a failure, and, I was reading my Bible, and I really love the Psalms, and I think it's in Psalm 37, where the psalmist says, don't be like the mule, which has to be bit and bridled with a bridle, otherwise it won't come near to you. And, that just really spoke to my heart regarding the filters, that, just like God spoke to me and said, you're the mule, right? You're the guy that has to have a filter, otherwise you can't behave. And so that just really convicted me at the moment that, I really wasn't dealing with the real issue. Yeah, so I just realized that the problem was deeper, and that if I didn't figure out how to get to the root issue, that my struggle with porn would just never go away. I'd struggle with it till the day I die. And just the thought of that was just extremely depressing and discouraging, that, I just couldn't imagine. I'd already struggled with it for 25 years, and I was extremely discouraged. And, I just couldn't see myself struggling, another 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, God bless you. I appreciate your emotion and your tears. I think that comes from your good heart. But it's what's kind of beautiful about that in the values of the kingdom is it feels like you were coming to a deeper place of true brokenness there, and almost desperation than you had ever been. And in the economy of God's kingdom, I would advocate that that's a really good place to get to, because it's kind of positioning you maybe to have a more authentic, powerful encounter with God than you've ever had before. Or maybe you're getting ready to let God do something deeper in you that might begin to get to the root issues of this.
Right.
Which you had never gotten to. If I could ask, this is going on for all these years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I remember Renee talking about this in her interview. So how would you say it was affecting the marriage over all these years? Presumably you're struggling and acting out. Would she on occasion catch you, or you would talk to her about it? That she was aware of the fact that this was ongoing through the marriage?
Yeah, she was. And so it was devastating, every now and then I would be completely honest, and it might go one of two ways. Renee might be very gracious and forgiving, or it might go the other extreme where she became very angry, and rightly so. And so there was, I guess there was just a lot of years of sometimes anger and bitterness and frustration, and sometimes graciousness and forgiveness. And, that we kind of went through that cycle. But what I didn't do, which is what I needed to do, was I was never consistently honest, and I think that was really the difference. So I just needed to be consistently honest 100% of the time. Not telling half truths, or if she is asking me how I'm doing, and I say okay, but my okay is okay. I've been doing good the last 2 days, but 3 days ago I looked at porn. Right? I mean, there was a lot of half truths coming from Greg. Because I was still ashamed, and I was still hiding, and I hadn't got to the place where I was willing to be completely honest.
In a very real way, there's a kind of duplicity there. You're living a lie. You're representing yourself to your wife to be one man that you're really not. You're kind of candy coating the reality of the situation.
Right.
Probably out of a sense of fear, maybe protecting her from the truth, maybe protecting yourself, trying to protect the marriage. And this goes on for a long time. But what I hear you saying is that something changed at some point where you realized, I can't do that anymore. I have to become more honest, radically honest, and live in the light than I ever have before. And I kind of hear you saying that was a big stepping stone in your healing journey.
Right. So I would say, maybe a year to a year and a half ago, a friend and I at church started to meet every week, and we went through Celebrate Recovery on, I think it was Thursday nights, and then we went through and did all your video podcasts, and so I guess in that relationship, I made a commitment with Scott that, okay, maybe I couldn't not look at porn, but I could be honest.
Hey, Scott, a shout out to Scott. If Scott listens to this podcast.
So over that period, I would always be honest, and maybe sometimes I might hide for a week, but then I'd eventually come clean the week later. And so I guess through that, I started, and I saw how honest he was in his relationship with his wife. And, I guess through your podcast and maybe another guy that I listen to occasionally is Dob Shoots, Porn Free Radio. And one of the things I noticed in the first couple of episodes of his is the amount of transparency that he had. And so I saw that in Scott, in you, and in Matt Dob Shoots, and I said, I don't have that. I don't have that level of transparency and honesty, and I wanted to have that. And so, it's kind of started with Scott, and then, maybe a year ago, I pretty much made a commitment to my wife as well that I'm gonna be transparent about my struggle with porn, and so I've kept that commitment, no matter how many times I failed, and I failed in the last year. I've failed a half a dozen times, but I've been honest. And about the same time frame a year ago, Renee went to a conference for women whose husbands struggle with sexual addiction, and it was a game changer for her too, because she came back from that with a new understanding and compassion for the struggle that I've had, and she came to realize that it's not about her, right, and it's about me and my issues. And so she became a very safe place to come and talk to. And, so it was much easier for me to be honest because I no longer had to fear, there was no longer any anger or threats of leaving me or, all of that, that was gone. And so Renee became a very safe place. And so that helped tremendously.
Made it easier for you to go to her to confess when you messed up and you had to come into the light.
Right. That's not to say that it didn't hurt, because it did, but she realized that it wasn't about her, so it didn't hurt as much.
Wow, what a blessing. God blessed you so much with a woman that had the grace from God to be so gracious to you and kind and loving, and to kind of be your helpmate to join you in this struggle and this battle.
Right.
So it feels like we're identifying here a couple key principles that really became strategic in your healing journey. One was this commitment to come into the light, to be more honest than you've ever been. And I might observe right there that I would advocate that this commitment to honesty relates in several different relationships. Number one, in a very real way, you were being more honest with yourself than you had ever been. And you made a commitment to be more honest with your wife than you had ever been. And you got a friend who was Scott. And so you had a kind of accountability partner, not in name only or pretend church men group kind of accountability. This was an authentic relationship. You guys are doing life together. It's heart to heart. You're being radically honest. You make this commitment to this brother. If I mess up, I'm going to be radically honest. Dude, you know everything about me. So you're moving into the light in several significant ways. To me, that implies God, too. If you're being more honest with yourself than you've ever been, and with your wife, and with Scott, you're probably being more honest and real with God, maybe, than you've ever been.
Yeah, probably so. And then the other thing that I did is I put on Covenant Eyes on my computer. And so, after the recognition that filters wasn't going to solve my problem, I didn't go to the extreme of locking down my computer. So what I did is I put Covenant Eyes on my computer, and I had asked 4 other guys to get my report, and they would get it every week. And my commitment to them was, before they got a report that I knew was going to be bad, they were going to get a phone call from Greg. And so, that was pretty humbling.
Did you have to do that sometimes?
Yeah, I've had to make, quite a few phone calls, and those were pretty tough, So I had not only those 4 phone calls to make, plus I had to go home and talk to my wife. And, those were humbling and humiliating and all of the above.
It had to make it hard to act out because, okay, I'm being tempted here. I have this itchy thing, this sexual itch. I'm going to scratch it. I'm going to look at porn. You cave in. But in advance, when I do this, I'm going to have to call these 4 people, and I'm going to have to tell my wife. Did that help you resist the temptation, knowing once you made the commitment to honesty, it must have begun to help you make better decisions? Hey guys, and with that being said, I hate to do it, but I see from the clock that we're out of time for today, so I need to jump into this episode at this point, and I want to invite you to come back next week for part 2 as we continue this interview with Greg from Louisiana. And I'm sure you've been blessed by this part 1 of the interview. Greg is a really good man with a really good heart, and he is on his own journey of purity. And I don't think Greg has arrived yet. I don't think he's perfect. I don't think he has a halo above his head. You heard him say in this episode that, in fact, he has stumbled several times this past year. But that is a radical difference and a radical achievement for the new Greg, because the old Greg was stumbling and looking at porn on a much, much more regular basis. So he's really come a long way. And one of the things that I just really appreciate about Greg's story is this commitment he made to honesty. And I really think that was a very pivotal decision for him that radically impacted him, because he knew once he made that commitment that when and if he acted out, he'd have to tell his 3 or 4 accountability partners and then his wife. And that was a very significant stepping stone in his healing journey. So please come back next week as we continue this interview. I know you'll be blessed. And in the meantime, have a great week, have a great day. Be blessed as you move on with God in your walk of purity. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.